Phonetics Lesson 1. Introduction to Phonetics. Learning Objectives. After going through this unit, you will be able to a. Understand the importance of language for the purpose of communication in various contexts. b. Know about the primacy of spoken language over the written form and also about phonetics and phonology besides understanding their role in the study of meaning in the smallest units of sound, and c. Realize the importance of spoken English in the modern times. 1.1 Introduction. The lesson gives a brief introduction to language and phonetics and makes you understand how human language is governed by a system or a set of rules for the purpose of intelligible communication. It also focuses on the difference between speech and writing as a means to express ideas and feelings besides showing the relationship between the spoken form and the written form. It also introduces you to how phonetics has evolved as an independent discipline and how the spoken word has assumed a far greater role ever than before. 1.2 Human language in general. Human beings live in society and they communicate with their fellow beings living in society for various purposes. Language is a valuable means of communication between them. It is used to express ideas, feelings or desires and also to preserve information. It is the basis of all types of social, religious, political or professional interaction and also the best source of knowledge, civilization and culture. However, communication is also possible without the use of language. A dog expresses his happiness or gratitude by wagging his tail. A hen can set her chicks scurrying up to her by clucking. A child expresses its hunger or thirst by weeping. In all these examples, communication is established but it lacks a system. Human language has a system. It works very differently with a set of 30 to 40 basic sounds. These sounds are not produced in isolation. They are combined with each other meaningfully to make words in accordance with the rules of a language. It is the combination of sounds which allows man to convey meaningful messages in different situations. Further, according to the rules, words are combined in different ways to produce the strings of phrases, clauses, sentences. Even in pronunciation, a system is found. Only persons who know the system can make use of language for communication purposes. Broadly speaking, communication through language can be done in two ways, speech and writing. Of the two, speech comes first in any language community and it is given more importance than writing because basically language means speech only. Speech is the elementary form of language. Language is developed through speech. Writing, on the other hand, always follows speech in each language system because language is not primarily writing or script. Writing is only a means to represent spoken language by letters of the alphabet. It has been developed to give a permanent form to spoken language with a system of one-to-one correspondence between sounds and letters. But in English there is no such correspondence between the spoken form and the written form. The same letter gives different sounds and the different letters produce the same sound. For example, the letter C stands for different sounds, K, S, in the words, car, sad face, R, and cell. The different letters, the same letter gives different sounds and the different letters produce the same sound. For example, the letter C stands for different sounds, K, S, in the words, car, sad face, R, and cell. The different letters, PH, F represent the same sound, F, in the following words, phone, and soft. This is so because English has 44 sounds and the alphabet has 26 letters. So sounds outnumber letters. Consequently, some of the letters are used to represent the same sound or the same letter stands for the different sounds. However, to overcome this problem, a special set of phonetic symbols for 44 sounds has been devised. Each symbol represents only one sound. Therefore it is important to learn English pronunciation in terms of phonetic symbols, phonemes, rather than letters of the alphabet. but the study of the spoken form, e.g. phonetic symbols. Pronunciation of a language is not all simple because each utterance has an infinite number of speech sounds which combine in different ways to form the strings of words. For the convenience of description and analysis, therefore, it is necessary to break up the strings of utterances into the smallest units of sounds possible. Phonetics is the study and science of speech sounds. It is a branch of linguistics. It studies the spoken form of a language, focusing on single sounds and its complex speech mechanism as well. We are going to study them in detail in the next section and the subsequent lessons as well. 1.3 Phonetics, a branch of linguistics. Phonetics is a branch of linguistics, which is a science of language. Etymologically, the word phonetics is derived from the Greek word phone, meaning sound or voice. It deals with speech sounds or pronunciation. It scientifically studies the physical sounds of human speech and analyzes the physical properties of speech sounds, phones. This study is done in three distinct ways: the processes of their physiological production, acoustic transmission, and auditory reception. In other words, it deals with the organs of speech, which produce sounds of language. It studies the physical process in which sounds are transmitted through the air from person to person, and it is also concerned with how listeners are able to recognize sounds through the medium of the ear. These subfields of phonetics as a research disciplines have developed into three main branches. 1. Articulatory phonetics is a subfield of phonetics. It is concerned with the articulation of speech. It studies the ways in which articulators or speech organs, such as the lips, tongue, teeth, vocal folds, etc., may move and interact with each other to create speech sounds, vowels and consonants. 2. Acoustic phonetics is a branch of phonetics. It investigates how sounds are set in motion through the medium of air and how the sound waves are vibrated unevenly in the process of transmission between speakers. It studies these acoustic details of speech sounds, such as a sound wave, speech frequency, etc., its duration, in transmission by careful listening, or with instruments such as a microphone and a small computer. 3. Auditory phonetics is concerned with speech perception. It studies how sound is received by the inner ear and perceived by the brain, primarily based on psychological experiments and some physiological studies. Phonetics and phonology. We have just seen what phonetics is and what its different subfields deal with. Now we look at functions of phonology. Like phonetics, which is the study of production of sounds, phonology also deals with speech sounds, but it focuses on the organization of speech sounds in a particular language. It studies specific systems and patterns of sounds and gesture, relating such concerns with other levels and aspects of language. Though phonology is grounded in phonetics, it has emerged as a distinct area of linguistics, dealing with abstract systems of sounds and gestural units, e.g., phoneme, features, mora, etc. It also studies their variants, e.g., allophones. The distinctive properties, features, which form the basis of meaningful contrast between these units, while classifying these units into natural classes based on shared behavior and phonological processes. Phonetics, on the other hand, tends to deal more with the physical properties of sounds and the physiological aspects of speech production and perception. It deals less with how sounds are patterned to encode meaning in language. 1.5 A brief history of phonetics. Before we proceed to discuss the importance of phonetics in the modern world, we will have a quick look at a brief history of phonetics. Since the 16th century, linguists, language teachers, orators, critics, spelling reformers, shorthand inventors, scholars have taken interest in phonetics. But it is at the beginning of the 19th century that phonetics became an independent subject of study. During the 7th century AD, besides the Indians, the Greeks, the Romans, the Egyptians and the Arabs showed keen interest in speech in connection with the Quran and the Arabic studies, leading to the developments in lexicography. in pronunciation studies and in language history. Some of their work is also concerned with the relation between the sounds of English and those of their language. Special mention must be made of Hart and Wallace. They took keen interest in the description of the organs of speech. Hart defined vowels and consonants and also noted the aspiration of voiceless plosives. Wallace intended his grammar to help foreigners learn English more easily and understand the true nature of the language thoroughly. John Wilkins, another noted philosopher of this period, described in his Towards a Real Character and a Philosophical Language, 1668, the functions of speech organs and offered a general classification of the sounds articulated by them. He provided pertinent suggestions for a phonetic alphabet. The famous phonetician of the 17th century, Christopher Cooper, who published book, The Discovery of the Art of Teaching and Learning the English Tongue, wanted to describe sounds articulated by them. He provided pertinent suggestions for a phonetic alphabet. The famous phonetician of the 17th century, Christopher Cooper, who published book, The Discovery of the Art of Teaching and Learning the English Tongue, wanted to describe and prescribe some rules for the pronunciation of English words. His aim was to describe English as it existed and not to reform its spelling. The 18th century writers were deeply interested in the preparation and compilation of dictionaries to standardize the language. The noteworthy contributions of this age are Dr. Samuel Johnson, 1755, Thomas Sheridan, 1780, and John Walker, 1791. Some of the scholars in the age confused phonetics with rhetoric. But the 19th century phoneticians made a clear distinction between the aesthetic judgments and the phonetic analysis. In England, Alexander J. Ellis, 1814–90, devised the alphabet called phonotype in 1847. He also developed other types of alphabet, notably glossic and paleo-type. In 1867, Alexander Melville Bell set out to classify all the sounds capable of being articulated by of the human speech organs while allotting a systematic and related series of symbols to the sounds. By the end of the 19th century, the developments in physiology and acoustics, and the accompanying progress in instrumentation, as demonstrated by Alexander Bell's system of visible speech, stimulated a considerable amount of experimental research into all branches of phonetics. In the late 19th century, scholars like Henry Sweet attempted at producing a phonetic alphabet. Later, the phonetic alphabet was popularized by a small group of language teachers, the Phonetic Teachers Association, in France, who had found the practice of phonetics useful in their teaching, and they also wished to popularize their methods. This group was changed to its present title of the International Phonetic Association, IPA, in 1897, and the phonetic alphabet was made the International Phonetic Alphabet. The system is still in general use. In the present century, phonetics has developed immensely into various branches, and is matured to a great extent to claim an independent status as a discipline. The focus of interest in this century has been to find out accurate and precise ways to describe sounds. Already some linguists have talked about linguistic sciences, by which they mean phonetics and linguistics. The former dealing with the general properties of human sound, making the latter with those properties which are of importance in the system of a particular language. Phonetic transcription is a major breakthrough of the modern age. Spectrographs, oscillographs, sound monitoring machines, tape recorders, and a number of other electronic devices developed by communications engineering have been greatly helpful in studying sounds. 1.6 Importance of phonetics in the modern world. In section 1.5 we have looked at how phonetics has grown as a subject of study over a period of time. Now we will discuss its importance in this section. The desire to learn English and the urge to acquire the ability to speak it is constantly growing by the day. This is so because the TV has tremendous influence on the people, and it has cast its magical spell all over the world. While the telephone has become an important instrument in nearly every business and day-to-day transactions. Also, Many people now go on international tours and participate in international seminars and conferences than ever before. To these, we must add the latest demands made on our listening and speaking abilities by call centers and telephone interviews for selection to lucrative posts in India and abroad. In addition to these, there are other motives for learning spoken English. An important one among them is the motive of acquiring a certain social status. In India, a mere knowledge of English is regarded as an index of being educated, while certain proficiency in speaking the language is considered as a mark of good education. Therefore, it is natural for the common people to desire for acquiring the ability to speak the language because of prestige attached to it. Even those who want to rank among the better classes might go to almost any length to acquire a correct pronunciation of it. The mushroom growth of teaching institutes offering courses in spoken English in almost every town is a clear proof of people's desire and demand for learning spoken English. This is a reality of how the spoken word has assumed a far greater role than it did ever before. 1.7 The nature of spoken language in India and abroad. In the previous section we have discussed growing importance of spoken English in the modern world because of various factors such as the advent of globalization, a revolution in information technology, etc. Now we will try to understand some aspects of spoken language and its variation for the purpose of a better understanding of spoken English. We all know from actual experience that the language spoken varies from one country to another, from one region to another, from one social group to another, and even from one occasion or topic to another. No one speaks the same way all the time. English is the best example in terms of variety. The way English is spoken in Delhi is quite different from the way it is spoken in eastern UP, Patna, Chennai or Hyderabad. Similarly, British English, American English, and Australian also differ in significant ways. This shows that a language gets influenced by many factors, conditions in which it is spoken. A geographical condition, location, is one of them. Therefore, the variation of spoken language is a result of the geographical origin of the speaker. Geographical and climatic influence on language. If we consider the geographical conditions of the world, the temperature varies from place to place and from season to season. The climate condition of a place influences the life of the people living in it. If the countries are situated far high from the equator, the temperature of those countries tends to be low. If the countries are nearer to the equator, such countries are said to have high temperatures. This variation in temperature brings about changes in the vibration of the vocal cords, or vibration in the vocal tract, which produce sound, thus affecting the ability to use the correct stress, rhythm, and intonation of a word in a spoken language. This is because the position of vocal cords is contracted in cool places like England, Scotland, etc., whereas they are expanded in hot places like India, Africa, etc. When the vocal cords are contracted, the frequency of vibration is higher, thus producing greater loudness. When the vocal cords are expanded, the frequency of vibration is lower, thus producing sound with lower intensity. The stress is typically produced by combination of greater loudness and higher pitch. Stress is an important feature of spoken English. Each syllabic sound in an utterance is spoken with unequal prominence. In other words, certain syllables are pronounced with greater force than others. This is because the climatic condition in which an utterance is made determines the nature of spoken language. For this reason, English that is spoken in England, even though a number of slightly different accents are used by native speakers, sounds different from English being spoken over the other parts of the world. Had there been an invariable temperature across the world, there would not have been any variation in spoken languages and there would not have been different accents, dialects or indialects for the purpose of language study. In India, there are many languages being spoken besides the English language. The English language, here, has more widely been used for communication purposes on a par with native English. But, unfortunately, when it comes to its pronunciation, Indian English is radically different from both British and American English because it is being influenced by regional languages, which behave differently from English in terms of pronunciation. This is because unlike English, the regional languages are pitch languages and give equal emphasis to every part of an utterance. Moreover, in India, the regional languages are too many and so do the regional differences of Indian English. Each variety shows its regional features, the phonetic patterns, phonological structures, etc. of the regional language spoken in that particular region. Each variety is different from the other in certain ways. These regional varieties of English are sometimes not even mutually intelligible. Then, how do two speakers belonging to two different regions understand each other? Very often, there are problems in understanding each other's accent or pronunciation. But in every region, however, there are speakers who have shaken off the gross features of regional accent and speak a more neutral form of Indian English. It is what is called general Indian English pronunciation, which is common among educated Indian speakers of English. Even among the educated group, there are differences in terms of being good speakers of English and bad speakers of English when the speakers are judged from the degrees of approximation to native English or standard Indian English, and also the qualities with regard to effective and intelligible speech. However, as English is an international language, there are bound to be differences in enunciating the sounds with the appropriate stress and intonation in the way they are pronounced by the native speakers. And yet, to reduce the gross differences in pronunciation associated with each region, it is necessary to have a standard English pronunciation as an essential criterion for international intelligibility and acceptability. A type of standard pronunciation as a model has already been in practice among native speakers and non-native speakers of English. It is known as received pronunciation, RP, and it is used in books, in CDs on English pronunciation, in BBC News, and in standard English dictionaries. It would be better to aim at achieving the same standard in India and abroad while getting over geographical, regional influences. 1.8 Conclusion. In this lesson we have tried to understand the nature of human language and how people usually communicate with one another through the use of speech, even though there are many different forms of communication. We have also made an attempt to see the difference between phonetics and phonology as a study of speech sounds, each analyzing speech into its basic units, which may thereafter be transcribed in some way. We have looked at a brief history of English phonetics and the contributions made by authors and scholars to the study of speech sounds significantly. Finally, we have discussed some of the important features of spoken English. In the next lesson we will describe speech mechanism and the organs of speech involved in the production of speech sounds. 1.9 Suggested questions. 1. What is the function of human language? Give some examples. 2. Discuss the difference between the following. A. Phonetics. B. Phonology. C. IP alphabet. D. Linguistics.